is Grace McDaniel. We will be continuing our series on the truth about the creation account. Our lesson today will be on the creation of man's unique cellular makeup and DNA. Last week, we briefly discussed how God, as the intelligent designer, took the initiative to create man on the sixth day of the creation account by shaping and fashioning his body from pre-existing elements of the earth. With these pre-existing elements of the earth, God created systems that operated the human body innately. Through science, we learned that the skeletal frame of man helps shape the body and influences the distribution of muscle, fat tissue, and various hormones. The intricacy and complexity of these systems collectively portray God as the intelligent designer. In addition to God beginning with the internal structure of man, God also provided man's body with a cellular makeup. God, in his infinite knowledge and manifold wisdom, designed man's body with trillions of cells. All living things are made up of cells. All cells come from similar pre-existing cells, and cells perform the functions of all living things. God creatively designed the cells to play a vital role in the lifespan of man. According to science, there are approximately 100 trillion atoms in a typical human cell. Cells are made up of molecules, which are manufactured by atoms, which are made up of energy, the basic unit of matter. God alone created cells to be incredibly small, weighing 10 to 12 grams. All cells consist of proteins, which are made up of hundreds and thousands of smaller units called amino acids. There are 20 different types of amino acids that can be combined to make proteins, which are the molecules of structure and function. All our cells have DNA in them, which are very similar to an intricate computer program. Please note that cells makes the proteins. According to science, two basic parts of every living system are DNA and protein. The DNA molecules code for the protein molecules that make us what we are. What I'm trying to get us to picture is that man could not evolve by chance or accident, and certainly did not evolve over time by an amoeba cell. It is necessary for all living cells to have proteins. They can only be formed in already living cells. God alone created molecular machines to make proteins. This thought refutes the evolutionists who wants us to believe that amino acids link together into organic goop to form proteins. This notion takes more faith to believe than just simply believing that God created man. According to Michael Ditton, who wrote Evolution, a Theory in Crisis by Adler and Adler in 1985, each of the cells has in effect a veritable micro-miniaturized factor containing thousands of exquisitely designed pieces of intricate molecular machines, made up altogether of 100,000 million atoms, far more complicated than any machinery built by man and absolutely without parallel. Microscopically and functionally complex, Cells act like a small city with multiple complex structures with a different role in the cell's operation. Multifaceted cells are manufacturing plants that synthesize hormones, neurotransmitters, proteins, and life force. God has created the body so phenomenal that within itself it can perform complex tasks of manufacturing, storage, repair, communication, transportation, police, waste disposal, administration, food production, temperature control, and pH balancing. God created the body to maintain a blood pH at about 7.35 through 7.45 to ward off infection and disease. Therefore, this information alone and more provides scientific evidence that there must be an intelligent designer. According to Thomas F. Hines, the author of the article Scientific Evidence That God Created Life, when a cell has made a new protein, while it is still moving into place, it folds into the exact shape which will allow it to connect with the proteins next to it. Again, the protein and the complex functions of cells demonstrate the infinite wisdom and knowledge of an intelligent designer. In the body, there is a gene pool of DNA, which is the genetic blueprint for life and cells. Let's take time to review briefly the DNA of man. DNA was discovered in 1952. DNA entails so much that scientists still to this day will never understand all there is to DNA. God, as the intelligent designer, in his infinite wisdom and manifold knowledge, designed all living things, which include man, to have living cells called DNA. God so fantastically created, fashioned, and designed man's body out of pre-existing elements of the earth with trillions of cells. Every individual cell in man's body is individually and perfectly developed according to the intricate design code imprinted by God on the DNA within all of our cells. DNA is a molecule that encodes genetic instructions used in the development and functioning of all living organisms. According to Soda Head, which wrote on DNA is the language and evidence of God, the DNA in man's body is 100 trillion times 6 feet divided by 92 million miles. There are 3 billion letters, DNA bases of A, T, C, and G in the human genome that would reach a height of 7,000 times the height of the Empire State Building. Note that approximately 30,000 gene codes for proteins perform most of life functions. DNA is the blueprint of life. The role that DNA plays in the production of plant, animal life, and mankind is outstanding. DNA is an extremely complex molecule, which is the design storage medium for each individual cell of the human body. DNA is, in fact, a 3 out of 4 code with storage capacity beyond our ability to comprehend. Each particular cell in the human body has a design code with information about how it should be manufactured, how it should function, repair itself, and replicate. The human body has 75 trillion cells, and each cell has a full complement of chromosomes in its nucleus. Each nucleus has 46 chromosomes made up of 23 pairs, one from each of the two parents of each individual. Each chromosome contains a strand of DNA. God created DNA with 4 amino acids: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. Each strand of DNA includes hundreds of millions of base pairs that, if stretched out straight, each strand of DNA would measure 3 to 9 feet long and about 20 atoms across. The CAN code includes details of our height, our personality, our intelligence, the colors of our eyes, and physical attributes. God is awesome. Evolution cannot duplicate this complex miracle of God. They continue to deny his existence as the intelligent designer. Let me provide you some unique signature attributes that God constructed within the molecules and proteins of all living things. DNA and mRNA all exist in the right-hand form, only which is known as dextrorotatory. The amino acids in all living systems are in the left-hand form, known as levorotatory. All DNA used in all living organisms is right-handed. God fixed it so that there would be no duplication, that if there was a mixture of self-generated DNA containing an equal amount of life and right-handed forms of DNA, it will be completely useless for life. DNA can be found in anything biologically, such as our blood, semen, sperm, hair, tissue, bones, organs, tooth pulp, bodily secretions, saliva, sweat, urine, and fingernails. People constantly shed DNA. There are approximately 3 trillion cells in the human body, and only about 100 is needed to obtain a DNA profile. What also is interesting is the fact that God was a genius when he designed DNA to be also in the white blood cells of man. It is the DNA that contains the information necessary to build and run all living organisms. DNA provides powerful evidence that God is the intelligent designer of man. DNA is an important component of living systems and is the primary information carrying molecule of living organisms. The DNA not only stores all the information necessary for each cell to feed and protect itself, but also to propagate itself into more living cells to make up a complex human being. According to Dr. Bergman, the DNA's blueprint puts into action complex machinery for living cells to move. The 60 trillion, this figure varies among scientists, interacting cells in the human body needs DNA if they are going to live, since it is DNA which is the source of the code of instructions to put together the machinery of cells. Dr. Bergman says that without the cellular machinery, we would have no DNA, since it is responsible for synthesizing DNA. Without DNA, we would have no cellular machinery. Since DNA and the machinery of the cell are codependent, the complete system must be present from the beginning, or it would be meaningless, bits and pieces. Dr. Bergman also states that with this information, there is no way DNA blueprint translation system could happen to come about by chance. Dr. Francis Collins, director of the Human Genome Project that mapped the human DNA structure, said that one can think of DNA as an instructional script, a software program sitting in the nucleus of the cell. Perry Marshall, an information specialist, commented on the implication of the cell like a software program, wherein he stated there has never existed a computer program that wasn't designed, whether it is a code or a program or a message given through a language, there is always an intelligent mind behind it. On June 26, 2000, President Clinton congratulated those who completed the human genome sequencing, and he said, "Today, we are learning the language in which God created life." Note that Clinton himself acknowledged that through this sequencing, it was God who created life. Clinton further stated, "We are gaining ever more awe for the complexity, the beauty, the wonder of God's most divine and sacred gift." Dr. Francis Collins, director of the Human Genome Project, followed Clinton to the podium stating, "It is humbling for me and awe-inspiring to realize that we have caught the first glimpse of our own instruction book, previously known only to God." In December 2004, a famous atheist and academic startles the scholarly world when he made the announcement that he now accepts the existence of God, largely due to his study of DNA. Professor Andrew Flew, then 81 years old, of the University of Reading, United Kingdom, was arguably the best-known atheist in the academic world for the past or the last 50 years. He helped set up the agenda for atheism with his paper, Theology and Falsification, which was considered the most widely reprinted philosophical publication of the last half. Professor Flew expressed that as he started changing his mind within the year of investigating DNA, the clincher was that the DNA evidence have shown by the almost unbelievable complexity of the arrangements which are needed to produce life that intelligence must be involved. Dr. Anthony Flew, who is also recognized as a British philosopher and a former leading spokesman for atheism, in his video interview in December 2004 stated that superintelligence is the only explanation for the origin of life and the complexity of nature. Dr. Flew came to this conclusion when he discovered that DNA in our cells were very similar to an intricate computer program which is made up of a series of ones and zeros, which are called binary codes. The sequencing and ordering of these ones and zeros are what make the computer program work properly. Because DNA is made up of 4 chemicals abbreviated as letters A, T, G, and C, much like the ones and zeros, these letters are arranged in the human cell like this: C, G, T, G, T, G, A, C, T, C, G, C, T, C, C, T, G, A, T, and so on. The order in which they are arranged instructs the cell's actions. What is so genius about these instructions is that within the tiny space of every cell in our bodies, this order is 3 billion letters long. Science says that to grasp the amount of DNA information in one cell, a love reading of that code at a rate of 3 letters per second would take 31 years, even if reading continually day and night. Collectively, science says that it has been determined that 99.9% of the DNA is similar to everyone's genetic makeup. What is uniquely about everyone is that there is a fractional difference in how these 3 billion letters are sequenced in everyone's cells. What is also fascinating about the DNA in our cells is that inside every cell in our bodies, there is a 3 billion letter DNA structure that belongs only to you and can identify only you and continually instructs your cell's behavior during your lifespan. What is more interesting is that the DNA proteins, to function properly, there is a barrier must surround these molecules to prevent unwanted reactions with the chemicals of the environment. DNA has the information to maintain this barrier, the cell membrane, and proteins to provide the catalyst for carrying out the reactions necessary for building and maintaining this barrier. Information in DNA also constructs the cell membrane so that it selects substances useful to the cell and protects against those that would cause harm. These 3 factors, DNA information, protein catalysts or enzymes, and a protective environment are all required simultaneously for life to exist as cells. Therefore, it is the cells that protect the life systems that God created in man. Therefore, based on the evidence and this important information concerning DNA that God created as part of man's cellular system, DNA is more evidence that God, as the intelligent designer, designed our bodies. Therefore, God exists. Please note that Genesis 1 provides for us factual and historical data that God alone, as the intelligent designer, made man out of the dust of the ground. If we are true to ourselves, we will acknowledge that God, who made man, is the intelligent designer, and man was not made from a non-life that evolved over time. Thank you for joining God's Grace Ministries. God's Grace Ministries is a bi-monthly, 24-minute program released on the second and fourth Saturday of each month at 9 o'clock p.m. Please subscribe. You will be encouraged, challenged, and inspired by the Word of God. You can call for CDs for $10 and DVDs for $15 at 231-894-0091. Thank you for joining us, and see you next time.